thoughts on the expansion draft today, I guess, in choosing Tyler?
The result was consistent with conversations we had had with LAFC. You go into this thing and you talk through all kinds of scenarios ahead of the draft. You try to be prepared for everything. There's always some risk, that things won't come off as discussed or as agreed. But this one did. This one came off, and the player we thought was going to get taken got taken. And it was a situation for us with Tyler. Look, I think Tyler's a really good goalkeeper. He'd put in 2.5 years of hard work with us, really done everything we'd asked. And it really earned the chance to go compete for a starting position. From our perspective, Steph Fry is our first goalkeeper. He's earned it. I saw it again in the final. Thought he was absolutely outstanding. We hope that Steph's our goalkeeper here for a number of years into the future. And that meant that, although you could find a short-term solution sending Tyler out on loan, his contract was going to expire long before you were going to get a long-term solution for him. So that meant that doing the right thing by him, getting him to a club that needed a goalkeeper to compete for a starting job, we felt that was right for Tyler. And we felt that of the expansion draft choices are all bad choices, right? You always get worse. You lose a player. So, of the bad choices in front of us, we thought that this was one of the least bad choices, as it allowed us to get $50,000 in allocation by being one of 5 teams of the player selected, and second, to not have lost other assets.
Garth, can you talk about the decision to not protect Ozzy Alonso for the super draft?
What I would say is, our choices on protecting and not protecting are all about the team. What's best for the organization. The other thing I'd tell you is, you guys have heard me mention before that player meetings are the morning after the final. And that's really tough, man. It just is objectively hard. It's hard for us as managers, and I've done a half dozen of them at this point. I've been in 4 finals and had to be on the losing team and the winning team, and it's just not a lot of fun. And so you just got to anticipate there are going to be some emotional reactions, because not everyone, there is no time to heal or get over or process what was a tough loss for us. So whatever happens, that is what it is. And again, like when we look at, in general, if you look at the history of expansion drafts, right? I mean, even in addition to the conversations that we had with LAFC, expensive older players are most often not selected. So, again, we felt like we had good information that it was relatively low risk to do that. Nothing is zero risk, but that was why we did what we did, and we'll move forward from there.
And what was that explained to us, Baldo Alonso? As in, we're trying to take a calculated risk type?
Look, what I would say is I've had a lot of meetings with players, and again, it's emotional. It's right after the season. Sometimes they don't understand, or they interpret differently things that we tell them. So we met with every player. We told them the plan. We gave them the information. Certainly Ozzy was included, as everybody. And again, I can't speak to what he understood or what he took away from that meeting, but I can tell you that we did indicate that we were prepared, and that we had a plan, and we had an idea of what we thought would happen. And again, that's been proven correct this morning.
Garth, Trey Muse just went to a College Cup with Indiana against Stanford. With Tyler and Brian leaving, does that change the timeline at all? Maybe talking to Trey about going pro?
First thing I'd say is that the guys that are out of contract, I wouldn't assume that they're leaving. I think Brian was out of contract. I don't even think there was an option to decline for us. So to him specifically, I'm cautiously optimistic that he'll return. So in terms of Trey, talking about Trey Muse at IU, Trey's had an awesome season. I got a call with Coach Yeagley, who I grew up playing with, right after this. So we'll talk about what's best for Trey and what's best for their program and kind of where he fits. There is an absolute onslaught of goalkeepers on the market right now. I mean, I think there were 20-some unprotected in the last draft. So I think we got a lot of choices, and we'll really look at what's best for Trey's long-term development and best for our club. And if we're successful in bringing Brian back, then we would actually feel pretty good as having a good foundation for our goalkeeping position. And then, we'll take the best other guy we can. And it could be that we both rate Trey really, really highly as the future, but maybe say goalkeepers develop more slowly. They need more games, and so it's not automatic. Whereas a field player who maybe started 30 games and was considered among the best of his position might be automatic to take him out of college. With goalkeepers, I treat that position a little bit differently, and in general want to be a little bit more slow and cautious with how we bring them out, because so much of their development is playing games and continuing to immerse themselves in that environment.
When it comes to developing goalkeepers,
I would think Tyler Miller's situation is maybe indicative of how hard it is to really find that balance between, you know, when you have a relatively young starting goalkeeper by goalkeeper standards, there's just not a lot of, like, how do you go about striking that balance between making sure you are able to keep guys but not holding them back at the same time, and still developing. And I mean, I just have to imagine that's a very difficult needle to thread.
It's always evolving. It's always challenging. And look, one injury can change your whole plan. So it's the one position where one guy plays, and the other guys, for the most part, don't. So what I would say, Jeremiah, is that long-term it's incumbent upon us to continue to develop goalkeepers, because then we'll have multiple options. Right now we have Saif, the kid at UW. We have Trey Muse at IU. So we do have a couple guys in the pipeline, in addition to Brian, in addition to Steph. Ton of goalkeepers out there. So again, in this case, I think we have a lot of options. It's one of those where, in the U.S. in general, at least since I retired, has consistently produced good goalkeepers. The self-deprecation, you get that?
I got
that. Okay. The frowns in the back here, though. Not funny, huh? All right, I'll work on my material. Anyway, there's a lot of good goalkeepers, and I think there will be.
I'm sorry about that. Having said that, you've been really successful in honing the skills of your goalkeepers. You can go back to Casey Keller. I mean, the system. What is it about your system that produces goalkeepers that are fundamentally sound, that also get the ball out?
Tom Dutra. He's the best goalkeeper coach in the league for me. He's been phenomenal. He has taken, I think Tyler, when we talked to him, and congrats to Tyler, by the way. Again, thanks for all his efforts. I think he's going to do great. But said the hardest thing to leave was Tommy's training. He felt like Tommy had really made him a lot better. And so Tommy's been tremendous. He's been a part of this club forever. Local guy, just like Coach Metzer, and means a lot in the community, means a lot to our club, means a lot to our staff. And, I honestly feel like as long as we give him some talented kids to work with, he'll make the best out of them, and we'll be okay at that spot for years to come.
And in your position, that must be comforting, because then you can take a look at, well, maybe this guy, because of the system we have and the coach like Tommy, then we can go ahead and make a move like Tyler that you don't want to, but you feel that you're confident that you can make.
Yeah, look, we're confident we can make, and again, I want to stress, like, this was the right thing for Tyler, and I think it's really important when you're dealing with players, whether at the end of their career or at the beginning of their career, we talk all the time about having a good culture and a good locker room and a good environment, and part of that is listening to your players. And so if your players express something strongly, I don't want to be here anymore, or I want to get an opportunity, those are things that, again, it's not a black and white, you have to do this, you have to do that, but I think it behooves us all to listen and to accommodate if we can. And again, I just think that that good culture, that good locker room is really, really important to our long-term future.
Is Adrian involved in any of this? Do you have to talk to him? I just don't understand. Like in some organizations, NFL, you got to talk with the owner. Just kind of from an insider perspective. Is he? I
talk to Adrian every day. Adrian is he owns the team, and he's always wanting to know what we're doing. And again, he did my job and did it really well for a long time. And so he's always got good ideas for me, and I enjoy talking to him.
Is Clint coming back next year on a new deal?
Alex, are we allowed to? Yeah, we're good. Okay. Yes.
How does a new deal for him help you, I guess, fill other needs on the roster?
He was the playoffs leading scorer, and he was our leading goal scorer for the year. So I feel like that addresses a need.
But in terms of just the flexibility, maybe a new deal that's a more team-friendly deal allows.
Yes, look, Clint worked with us, and he's taken less money than he was on before to come back. Still well paid, well compensated, but certainly, yes, we hope that long term that creates a little bit more balance with respect to our DP spend. And look, we haven't covered this yet, but to segue a little bit is the big story for next year, right? Is that this new TAM money coming in, right? And our club expects to fund the TAM, and that means I think a healthy move away from top heavy rosters into more balanced rosters with more depth, more competition for places. You've seen with the TAM guys that we've brought in so far, Leardem, Rodriguez, Torres, and Ozzy has been a TAM at various points. So those guys are all high-level players. And if we're able to continue to bring in players like that, I think that the DP, the guy that kind of is up there and is making an amount that no one else is making, I think it makes a lot more sense to have guys in a much more narrow salary band. And again, I think it creates a more cohesive whole. And again, re-signing Clint was consistent with that.
He'll still be a DP, though.
He will still be a DP. That's accurate.
And is he just on at this point of his career, is he just on a year-by-year sort of evaluation of how much longer he wants to play?
Yeah, look, I'll let Clint speak to that, right, as to what his plans are, but the current commitment from the club is for 1 more year.
What's the plan for Alonso at this point? Is it fully that he's part of your expectation, he's part of the team, and that's like him not being protected was not indicative of or was it indicative of where he fits with the team?
Again, the protection decisions are honestly not individual for the most part. It's just a team strategy as to what assets you put out and how the marketplace values them, and the research that we've done to assess that marketplace value. So, I understand it's an unsatisfying answer, but truly, like, they're not necessarily related that much at all. Ozzy's under contract for next year, and so as with any other player under contract, we'd assume that he would continue with us.
Garth, after you exercise options, you have 22 guys on your roster right now, I think. Does that make things easier, knowing that you can kind of small ball a little bit as you enter free agency and looking at the winter transfer window?
I think I said this after last year. I mean, when we had to change 13 players, it's really hard to add that many players in one transfer window. And you saw we really kind of gradually did it over the course of the year, and the team got better as the year went on. We believe we're closer to a sustainable core. We took the number of players over 30 from, I think it was 13 last year. I think we're down to 8 and maybe 5 or 6 under contract. So again, I think that itself creates a more sellable base in terms of what we want to do. But we're facing a year next year. We've gone very long, keep in mind now. So we went in 2016, we went February Champions League all the way through December final. Had the same, no Champions League this year, but went all the way through December final. And speaking to the Galaxy guys who played on that 11-12, who managed that 11-12, 13-14 run when they were really good, we have to be cautious, too, about managing our players over that. There's just not a lot of time, again, to catch up. And then we're going to go pedal to the metal in February to try to win Champions League. And we still got to have some guys around to play, hopefully, in an MLS Cup playoff round. So one of the things that we're mindful of this year, in terms of our depth and the age of our players, is we could play 48 games. So 34 league season games. If you go all the way in Champions League, that's 8 games. If you were to play every MLS playoff game, it could be up to 6 playoff games. So again, it's very unlikely that you're going to play that many, but you have to be prepared to be able to do that. And when you look at 48 games as compared to, say, 39 I think we played this year, that's a lot more games, and it's a long time to play. And so we really have to look at the depth of the squad when we build it, because I think we're going to need absolutely everybody in this coming year, and we're going to need guys that can play 30, 40 games potentially in terms of fielding our best team.
Along those same lines, is your hope and maybe even your expectation that your roster will be more set when the season opens this year than it has been in the last couple years?
I think so. I'm cautious in answering that, Jeremiah, in the sense that I think I've expressed my philosophy pretty clearly, that I want to give young players opportunities. That's how you continue to replenish the team. That's how you continue to have competition for spots. So I don't want to come into February and say we're all set. Nothing's going to change. Whoever's here is here. We can't evolve the group. But yes, do we have more guys under contract? Do we have, if you looked at our starting, if you did look at who we protected, right? I think we protected our whole starting lineup, right? The only one we didn't protect was Joven, and we protected Nuhu, who will now be our starting left back. So, if you look at that group, I think we still feel like, despite not having our best day in MLS Cup, that's a pretty darn good group. I mean, we lost 2 games in the last 6 months of the season before the final, and again, didn't have a great performance on that final day. But I don't think we're going to go back to the drawing board on that group. Now, are there things we can do to make it better? Are there things we can do to make it more competitive? Absolutely yes, and we're going to try to do those things. So we're not standing pat. We do need to improve. Every team in the league is going to improve if you're entering this world where everybody has $3 million more to spend, more or less. But we like what we have. I mean, and I would say we're happier with where we are now, and we believe we had a more talented team this year than we did the year before.
Brad Evans is a free agent now. Was there any conversations with him about a possible contract?
Yeah. So with Lamar and with Brad and with Brian Meredith and there's one more blank space. You remember who? Yeah. Sorry.
I think it was just them. Right?
Yeah.
Malice.
Colin Malice. Yes. Sorry, I knew it was 4. Nagel, Evans, Malice, Meredith. Doors open, conversations with all of them. The guys, Nagel and Evans, have earned the right to be free agents, and they're going to check out the marketplace and see what's out there. And we'll continue to talk to them, and if it makes sense for both parties, we'll go ahead. I talked about Meredith already, and even with Colin Malice, I think that the door's not closed. I still, think he didn't get on the field for us, but it was pretty tough to come into a pretty stacked team pretty late in the season. And again, if that's something he wants to do and he wants to come back, then we'll look at trying to figure out a way to do it.
Speaking of the CCL draw that's coming up, what are you expecting from that tournament and the possibility of the teams that you guys can play?
Yeah, it looks like we're going to play a Central American team. I think 7 of the 8 teams maybe are Central American. Maybe one Bermudan team, I think, out of that group. So I'm flying down to Miami for the draw. I think it's a week from, maybe it's Monday, I think. So 6 days from now, and we'll find out who we're playing and where we're playing. From what I understand, we're going to be away the first leg and home the second leg, which means our first home game of the year, end of February, and we hope our fans will come out. I mean, I think it's a really exciting tournament. The Sounders historically have been one of the more successful teams in Champions League, and look, make no mistake. When owners make and the league makes the kind of investment they have in TAM, we're trying to go toe to toe with Liga MX, and there's no ducking that. You got to understand and that this is a huge challenge, and no one's saying that all of a sudden now our payrolls are level with Club America or anything like that. But we're going to take them on, and we're going to try to beat them. And we believe that the way to grow our league is to win Champions League, and that's an ambition of our club. It's an ambition of our league, and again, it's incumbent upon us to get better in an effort to try and go out and win the thing.
Are there any spots on the field where you're looking to bolster with TAM level guys this offseason?
We'll assess the whole squad. We'll assess the value of the guys we're playing, that we're scouting, and we'll look at ways we can improve the team all over the field. So there's no sacred cows in this kind of thing. It's going out and trying to get better.
A lot of these CONCACAF clubs have a lot of South American talent players. Is there any ideas of maybe preparing with some friendlies with South American teams for this CONCACAF Champions League?
Possible, yeah. We're looking at a game potentially the week before the first away leg. We're going to be in Arizona in preseason and back in Tucson again, and we'll spend some time up here in Seattle. So one of the things that we're looking at is maybe playing a game here in Seattle as our friendly, maybe before the season starts. So yeah, Nico, that's something we've consistent with what we've done in the past. We're to try to play a CONCACAF team or a South American team ahead of the Champions League. I think is something that we will explore.
Last year you signed 2 homegrowns and then brought up 3 guys from SC. Knowing that you exercise more options this year and it's a pretty 22 guys on the roster, do you think you'll have some young guys come up, or is it just kind of a tough window for this year?
Look, we're always, it'll come down to how the guys earn it. It's what I would say is, as a practical matter, when you have a 4-week preseason and you got to play Champions League in a month, and you're coming off only a 6-week break, the opportunity for younger players to break in that preseason is probably lower than it would be in some other ones. So that is what it is. That said, if you look at players like Henry Wingo, these guys, Jordi Delem, Zach Mathers, guys who we did sign last year. The whole point is that those guys are going to grow, and we're bringing them back to see if they're going to continue growing. And so I don't know that you'll see us sign a new player every year. And by the way, there are kids in college that we're talking to that we may in fact bring in and sign. But even if we don't, I wouldn't look at that as a disappointment from a player development perspective, because we believe we have a number of young players that haven't gotten a ton of opportunity yet, and will continue to push forward and be a bigger part of our first team group. But was definitely proud. Like, look, we're 2 years into our process, and we had 2 guys in the 18 for the MLS Cup final that came through our player development system. Sorry, 3. Jordi Delem, Jordan Morris, and Nuhu Tolo, and 2 of them got on the field. So we want to move to a world where these guys are starting MLS Cups, but we're getting there. We're working on it.
Garth, you and Brian talked before last season about managing minutes and games early in the season with the short off-season window. Were there any, overarching lessons that you took from that experience that will help you managing, even an even shorter off-season this year?
What I'll say is that yes, we definitely learned something, and what I would say is, we had a pretty inexperienced first-team staff, if you look at it. Brian Schmetzer, full year as a head coach, and obviously done phenomenally well for us, did phenomenally well this year as well as he did last year, but it was just fundamentally a new challenge. Had not managed an MLS-level group for this period of time. Gonzalo Pineda was a first-year assistant. Jimmy Troy was a second-year assistant. A lot of our experience was coming from Tommy Dutra and David Tenney, and of course David Tenney left ahead of the stretch run for the Magic. So I give these guys a ton of credit. I think the way that Gonzo has grown and Jimmy has grown in terms of their ability to adapt their ideas and put them into practice on the field, how Brian has evolved in terms of how he's managed things. And look, it's just fundamentally a more complex environment. You know, you've heard me talk about, you know, we were a soccer team in 2014. Now we're a soccer organization with a reserve team and with youth players. And, you know, for example, Brian instituted about every other week a game with young players that was overseen by the first team staff and that integrated the bottom of the first team roster with these kids that are up and coming. And so we're going to continue to be innovative about that. One of the things we've done internally for next year is we promoted Mark Nichols, who's our academy director, and we've made him our manager of player development. And so he now is the man within the organization that's responsible for the continued development of all these kids. Now we sign a 16-year-old like Asriel Gonzalez. We have someone who is personally responsible for their education off the field, their personal development, as well as their soccer and their training from a fitness and nutrition and sports science perspective. And that's kind of the next step in the evolution of the club. And just fundamentally, Brian has had to touch and manage and mold all of these departments. And it's a really complex job. And I think the staff has done an amazing job, given their experience in that environment, to really adapt and take their high-level experience and then translate it on the field with players at different points in their career.
Is that a new job, or is that part of what it's a brand new job?
Yep. Yeah, it's really, you know, what we found, and you know, because you've heard us talk about, hey, we're going to have this player development pipeline, and we're going to move guys from one team to the next. And what we'd found after 18 months or so of this was kids don't move in a linear fashion. So it's very important to take your most talented young kids and get them with the first team every once in a while. But at the same time, if you just put them there, they're probably going to drown because the physical difference is so much. So the word you guys have heard me use is sampling. We need them to sample. So we need them to sample first team and then go get a game with the reserve team and then maybe even go get a game with the U19s if they're coming off injury. They need a little bit of confidence, or they just need to be around socially some kids their age. These are all things that are really important to their overall development. And you know, the other thing I think you're going to see us do is divorce contracts from training. And so what I mean by that is you're going to have some kids on S2 contracts that may be playing academy. You may have some kids on first team contracts that are playing S2. You may have a kid on an S2 contract playing up with the first team, you know, in Open Cup games and things like that. So the day-to-day training group may be different than the contracted group. And it's all about how do you get these guys into the player development system. And put it this way, I don't think Asriel Gonzalez is the last teenager we're going to sign. You know, to state the obvious, when we have a 5-year plan for our academy, the younger kids are the better kids in the pipeline. Again, that's not a knock on anybody that's older. It's just we hadn't had the level of commitment and recruitment from all over the country. And, you know, we've really been able to raise the level as seen by the quarterfinal performance and the semifinal performance of our two age groups. And again, I think our academy is only going to get better, which it needs to, because when the first team jumps $3 million a year in a salary, from a salary cap perspective, the cap's doubled in 3 years now. That creates enormous pressure on us to develop players that we can push eventually into the first team. And not least of all, because just basic math, if you have 3 DPs on your team, and you have this amount of TAM money, you're probably going to have at least 5 TAM players, let's say. So there's your 8 international spots right there. So now you have to have places for young international players to move their way up, but you also need to be conscious of filling out rosters long-term with young local players. And we're going to continue to invest in that, and it's definitely a work in progress, but everything needs to get better now in order to keep pace as a whole system.
You've talked a lot in the past about not loving the idea of major midseason acquisitions. Would it be your goal to have whatever you're going to do with TAM, whatever you're going to do with your DP slots, would it be your goal to have that in place by February, March?
You know, look, what I would say is, and I first of all, I definitely said that. You're absolutely right. And I think I've had to sign a player every summer since I got here. So maybe attribute that a little bit to the transition from a smaller club to a bigger club. Look, at a bigger club, you have more opportunities, you have more resources, and you have more complex decisions. And so what I would say on the DP thing in general is, again, you guys heard me talk, it's a 3 to 5 year decision. You know, and if the best player is available in the summer and not in January, then honestly, you're probably going to see us sign the player in the summer as opposed to January. You know, again, we would look at that as a net positive, because that gives an opportunity for younger players then to play, particularly in the beginning part of the season, and then we can add assets in the summer. The other advantage of adding in the summer is simply that you can adjust. So you know, at right back, we thought we had a plan this year. We played 7 guys for 16 games. We said, the plan's not working. We better fix it. So, what I would say is simply, I'm less dogmatic now than maybe I was, because I thought I knew everything when I came from my small little club. Probably still guilty of that sometimes, so I apologize. But just, it's complex, it's fluid. Look, with 22 guys under contract, with more or less a starting 11 on paper in front of us already, I think we got a really good base. And again, what that does is that allows us to make the best possible decision for a club. So again, will we fill roster spots to fill roster spots? No. Are we honestly ahead of where we were last year? I believe that we are, just because, again, I think our starting lineup's in a better place. I think our depth's in a better place. I think we're a better, more sustainable age. So in that sense, we might sign somebody this summer. But I hope to have a pretty good team come January.
When you report for training in 2018?
January 22, which is 6 weeks from yesterday. They will report. So the same thing as last year, where the CBA dictates 6 weeks off, and they'll get 6 weeks off, and unfortunately, that is where we're right now. Well, unfortunately, we'll be excited to come right back at it, but again, you can see this by the body language of you guys who cover us. I think you guys need an off season, so make sure you get enough eggnog this over Christmas this year, and whatever holiday you celebrate, and we'll look forward to seeing all you guys come January 22, and what I'm sure will be another sunny, dry day here in Seattle.
Thank you.
Was there anything you saw on MLS Cup that maybe changed your perspective on the state of the roster, or do you think that it was more aberration?
A little both. You never want to read too much into one game. Again, I think I've been consistent in saying that about games in July, the same as in games in December. I have a lot more confidence in where our roster is overall. Again, we lost 2 games in 6 months, so were we at Toronto's level on the day? No. Were we better? Are we better? Do we believe we are better than we showed on that day? Absolutely, yes. Do we need to dig into the causes as to why we were not better on that day? Yes, we do. But some of those causes might be emotional, cultural, off the field type stuff, as opposed to, we don't have any talent, we can't compete with Toronto. So, again, the league's evolving, the league's getting better. For sure, we need to look at that, and we'll try to be as clear-eyed as we can, and try to come into it as humbly as we can, and say we just lost the final, and we're comprehensively outplayed, if we're honest. And we need that not to happen again. But that said, again, when I came 3 years ago, if you said you're going to make 2 titles and 2 title games, you're going to win one of them on the road, probably take that. So I like the progress we've made. We need to continue to make progress. We need to continue to get better.
You dying to give us a soundbite about wanting to face Toronto FC in a CCL final?
That would be fun, right? And that'd be over 2 legs, so we get to play them in CenturyLink. Now, look, you guys know, personally, I like the guys in Toronto a whole bunch. I worked with virtually everybody up there, so it's a really well-run organization, and tip of the cap to them. I think I can say now best team ever without throwing up in my mouth. So I just wish we would have given them a better game on the day. I really do. But I certainly, based on the result, I can't grouch at them for saying things like that. So, look, it's not personal about them. It's not about Toronto. It's about making our team better. And if we win Champions League without playing Toronto, I'm going to enjoy it every bit as much as if we beat them in the final.